The morning began with tension in the air. Inside a huge modern company building, people rushed back and forth, carrying files, checking machines, and whispering nervously. The sound of heavy boots echoed across the steel floor. Every eye turned when the tall glass doors opened, and Mr. Grant, the company's CEO, stepped inside. His face looked sharp, his suit perfect, but his voice carried anger. Something was wrong, and everyone knew it. For the last 3 weeks, the company's main project had failed again and again. A big machine, one that was supposed to save millions of dollars, had stopped working. Engineers had tried everything, but nothing helped. It had become a nightmare. Investors were calling. Clients were waiting. And the CEO was losing his patience. Mr. Grant stopped in front of the silent, broken machine. His reflection showed on its metal surface. He stared at it like it was a personal enemy. The team of engineers stood around him, sweating. One of them tried to speak, but Mr. Grant raised his hand. "Don't tell me what you think," he said coldly. "Tell me what you've done." The room went quiet. The only sound came from the air conditioner and the ticking of a wall clock. The senior engineer swallowed hard. "Sir, we've replaced the core wires, recalibrated the sensors, and checked the system 5 times. We can't find the problem." Mr. Grant laughed, but not kindly. It was the kind of laugh that made people feel small. "Can't find the problem?" he repeated. "You people call yourselves engineers? Even my car's smarter than this thing." He walked around the machine slowly, like a predator circling its prey. His voice rose. "Do you know how much this delay is costing us? Every minute this thing sits here, we lose thousands." No one dared to answer. Their heads dropped, eyes staring at the floor. Mr. Grant shook his head. "Useless," he muttered. "All of you." Then, as if mocking them, he smirked and said, "Tell you what. Whoever fixes this machine gets my car." The words hit the air like lightning. Everyone looked up, surprised. His car wasn't just any car, it was a brand new black Mercedes, the one parked outside that everyone admired but no one touched. Some of the engineers smiled nervously, thinking it was a joke. But Mr. Grant's face was serious. "You fix it," he repeated, "and the car's yours." People began whispering to each other. The challenge had changed everything. Pride, fear, and hope mixed together in the room. But in one corner, quietly mopping the floor near the back wall, stood a man nobody paid attention to. His name was Marcus. The janitor. He'd been there for 15 years, cleaning the floors, emptying trash bins, and wiping the desks that others worked on. Nobody ever asked what he thought. Nobody ever looked at him twice. Marcus watched the scene from behind his mop handle. His eyes, dark and calm, moved from the angry CEO to the broken machine. He didn't say a word, but there was a small flicker of curiosity on his face. While everyone else saw a problem, Marcus seemed to see something else, something hidden. Mr. Grant turned back toward the engineers. "Get it fixed by tomorrow," he snapped. "If you can't, I'll find people who can." He walked away, leaving silence behind him. The engineers rushed back to their stations, trying everything they could think of. Wires were replaced, tools clattered, and voices argued. The room buzzed with activity and frustration. Marcus quietly moved to the other side of the room, pushing his mop bucket. As he cleaned, his eyes kept glancing toward the machine. He could hear the engineers talking about circuits, programming, and voltage. He didn't understand all their fancy words, but he understood how things worked. He had once fixed machines like that before. Before life pushed him into this job. Before he became invisible. As he moved closer, he noticed something. A small, thin pipe at the side of the machine looked slightly bent. He frowned, his instincts telling him that something wasn't right. He wanted to say something, but then he remembered what had happened last time he tried. Months ago, he had given a small suggestion about a storage unit's problem. People had laughed at him. "Stick to mopping, Marcus," one of them had said. He had never forgotten those words. So, he stayed silent. He dipped the mop again, pretending to clean, though his eyes never left that pipe. Hours passed. The engineers were still trying. Frustration grew. One of them threw down a wrench. "It's useless," he shouted. "Nothing works." Mr. Grant's assistant walked in, telling them the CEO wanted updates. The engineer sighed. "Tell him we're still trying." In the corner, Marcus whispered softly, "You're trying too hard in the wrong place." But nobody heard him. At that moment, one of the engineers accidentally bumped into Marcus's bucket. Water splashed everywhere, near the machine, near the floor, near Marcus's shoes. Everyone gasped, and then laughter broke out. "Watch it, Janitor," someone said mockingly. "You almost shorted the system." Even Mr. Grant, who had returned quietly to watch, let out a small laugh. "Careful, or the janitor will fix it before you," he joked. Everyone laughed harder. Marcus forced a smile, trying not to show his embarrassment. But deep inside, something changed. He looked straight at the CEO for a moment, his expression calm but strong. He didn't say a word. He just went back to cleaning, the sound of his mop echoing softly in the room. Yet his eyes lingered again on that small bent pipe. His mind was working quietly, faster than anyone knew. Outside, the sun was setting, the light turning golden through the big windows. The engineers looked tired. The CEO sighed and walked out, frustrated. "Tomorrow," he said sharply, "I want this fixed." One by one, the team packed up their tools and left. The lights dimmed, and silence filled the room again. Only Marcus remained, sweeping slowly, his reflection shining faintly on the machine's metal surface. He stopped, looked at the machine one last time, and whispered to himself, "Maybe it's not broken after all." He picked up his mop, wheeled his bucket out, and disappeared into the hallway. But his words hung in the air, quiet and mysterious, like the calm before something big. The next morning, the factory floor was filled with noise again. The sound of metal tools, footsteps, and voices blended into a single restless rhythm. The engineers looked tired, dark circles under their eyes. Most of them hadn't slept much. The machine stood in the center of the room like a giant that refused to wake up. It looked clean, shiny, but dead inside. Mr. Grant arrived early, holding a cup of coffee in one hand and anger in his eyes. His assistant followed close behind, holding files. "Tell me good news," the CEO said before anyone could even greet him. The senior engineer tried to smile. "We're close, sir. We made some progress." Mr. Grant's expression stayed cold. "Close means nothing," he said. "Either it works, or it doesn't." He took a slow sip of his coffee, looking at the machine like it had insulted him personally. Everyone fell silent. In the corner, Marcus entered quietly, pushing his mop bucket as usual. He was wearing the same blue uniform, the same old shoes, and the same patient look on his face. Nobody said hello. Nobody even noticed him. He began sweeping near the far wall, humming softly under his breath. But while his hands moved the mop, his eyes were somewhere else. He kept glancing at the machine. He could see the same bent pipe from yesterday, the same flickering light on the control panel, and something else, a tiny drop of oil leaking near the side panel. It was small, but to Marcus, it was a clue. He wanted to step closer, to check it, but he knew better. Yesterday's laughter still echoed in his mind. He could still feel their eyes on him when the bucket spilled. He remembered the CEO's joke, "Careful, or the janitor will fix it before you." That line replayed in his head, again and again. He whispered to himself, "They'll laugh again if I say something." Then he shook his head and kept cleaning. Meanwhile, the engineers argued about what to do next. One of them wanted to replace a circuit board, another said it was a software issue. Voices rose, frustration building. Mr. Grant slammed his hand on the table. "Stop talking and fix it," he shouted. The room went quiet again. For a moment, everyone froze. The tension was heavy. Marcus looked up from the corner and saw their faces: fear, pressure, pride. He understood it. He had seen that same look years ago, before his old company had shut down. Back then, he had been one of them, a technician who worked hard but was never noticed. When the company went bankrupt, he took the only job he could find, janitor. But deep down, he never stopped learning, never stopped understanding machines. He sighed softly. "Machines are simple," he murmured to himself. "It's people who make things complicated." Hours passed. The engineers opened panels, rewired cables, and typed codes into computers. Nothing changed. The machine stayed silent. Mr. Grant grew more impatient with every minute. He paced back and forth like a lion in a cage. "I can't believe we're paying people who can't do their jobs," he muttered. Marcus continued cleaning, pretending not to hear, but he did. Every word. Every sigh. Every sound of failure. Around noon, the CEO left for a meeting upstairs, warning that he wanted results by evening. The moment the doors closed behind him, everyone relaxed a little. Some sat down, exhausted. One of the younger engineers leaned against a wall and said, "Man, this is pointless. That machine's cursed." Marcus stopped mopping for a second. "Cursed," he thought. "No, it's not cursed. It's just misunderstood." He wanted to say something, but fear held his tongue. He glanced around the room. No one was looking his way. He slowly moved closer to the machine, pretending to clean the floor near it. Up close, he could see it better now, the bent pipe connected to a pressure valve. The valve had dust around it, as if it hadn't been opened in a long time. He noticed something even smaller, a thin crack in the seal that could easily block airflow. He bent down slightly, pretending to pick something from the floor, and whispered, "That's it." His heart started to beat faster. He knew what was wrong. It wasn't the software. It wasn't the wires. It was just a blocked airline. He looked around again. Still, no one cared about him. The engineers were eating lunch, talking about how hopeless it was. Marcus's hand tightened on the mop handle. "If I fix it," he thought, "they'll laugh again. If I say nothing, they'll fail." He took a deep breath and stepped back. Maybe it was better to wait. Maybe he could do it later, quietly, when nobody was watching. Then suddenly, one of the engineers threw his sandwich on the table and said, "This is stupid. We need a miracle to fix this." Another replied, laughing, "Maybe the janitor should try. He seems to have all the answers." The room filled with laughter again. Marcus froze. They didn't mean it seriously, but the words stung. He looked at them, then at the machine, then at the door where the CEO had gone out earlier. He whispered, "A miracle, huh?" and turned back to his mop. For the rest of the day, Marcus stayed quiet. But his mind didn't. It worked faster than ever, replaying what he had seen, what could be causing the problem. He was sure he was right. Completely sure. When the clock struck 6, the engineers started packing up. They were defeated again. The CEO's face would not be happy tonight. Everyone left one by one, their footsteps echoing down the hall. Marcus waited until the room was empty. The only light came from the big windows glowing with the evening sun. The air felt still. He slowly placed the mop against the wall, wiped his hands on his uniform, and walked toward the machine. He touched the metal surface gently, like it was alive. The warmth of the machine told him it still had power, it wasn't dead, just blocked. He looked at the valve, then at the tools scattered on a table nearby. He hesitated. If I do this, they'll know, he whispered. But maybe it's time they did. He reached for a small wrench and crouched beside the machine. His hands were steady, eyes focused. He turned the valve slightly, cleared the dust, and listened carefully. A soft hiss escaped, air moving freely again. A small smile appeared on his face. He whispered, "There you go, old friend." But before he could test it, footsteps echoed from the hallway. Someone was coming. He quickly stepped back, picked up his mop, and pretended to clean again. The door opened, it was the night guard. "Still here, Marcus?" the guard asked. Marcus nodded. "Just finishing up," he said calmly. The guard smiled. "You're the only one who never gives up, huh?" Marcus smiled back faintly. "Maybe that's why I'm still here." As the guard left, Marcus looked once more at the machine. The hiss had stopped, but the air was flowing now. He didn't press the start button, not yet. He wanted to be sure, to do it right. He whispered softly, "Tomorrow, they'll see." Then he pushed his bucket out of the room, leaving behind silence, a faint smell of oil, and a machine that was just one touch away from waking up. The next morning came with dark clouds above the city. The wind was heavy, and the sky looked like rain. Inside the company building, the mood was the same, heavy, gray, and tense. The machine still stood silent, and so did the hope of everyone who worked there. When Mr. Grant entered, his sharp steps echoed like thunder. He didn't greet anyone. He just looked straight at the engineers and asked, "Is it working?" No one answered right away. The senior engineer finally spoke in a small voice, "Not yet, sir. But we think we're close." "Close," the CEO repeated with a glare. "I've been hearing that word for days. I don't want close. I want results." He slammed his hand on the control desk. The sound made everyone flinch. The room went quiet. From the corner, Marcus watched, quietly pushing his mop. He felt bad for them, but also a little sad. They were chasing big answers and missing the small one right in front of them. He looked at the bent pipe again. The air was flowing now, he had fixed that part last night. But the machine still wasn't turned on. No one had even noticed the change. Marcus took a deep breath. He wanted to speak. He wanted to say, "Try now. Just try it once." But he didn't. He kept mopping. One of the engineers noticed him nearby and frowned. "Hey, can you move that bucket?" "You're in the way," he said sharply. Marcus nodded, moving quietly. But the man muttered under his breath, "Why do they even let janitors walk near this area?" Another engineer laughed. "Maybe he'll fix it for us," he joked. Mr. Grant turned his head and smirked slightly. "If he could fix it, I'd give him the whole building," he said sarcastically. Everyone laughed. Marcus forced a small smile, but it hurt. Every joke was like a knife, quiet but sharp. Still, he said nothing. The hours crawled by. Engineers tried, argued, and failed again. Tools clattered. A few shouted at each other. The CEO grew more furious. By noon, his patience was gone. He looked around and said loudly, "You all had your chance. Maybe I should hire people who actually know what they're doing." Nobody spoke. The air in the room felt cold. Marcus stood in the corner, his mop still, his eyes fixed on the machine. He had seen enough. His hands trembled slightly, not from fear, but from frustration. He thought of his old days, how he used to fix things with pride. How people used to call him Marcus the Machine Whisperer. He had been good at his job. He loved it. But after the company he worked for shut down, life had forced him into silence. Now he was invisible again. He whispered under his breath, "Maybe this is the moment to stop being invisible." The day dragged on. The rain began to fall outside, tapping against the glass windows. Mr. Grant walked out of the room again, angry and tired. The engineers sighed in relief once he was gone. One of them leaned against the desk and said, "We should just quit. There's no fixing this." Another shook his head. "Yeah, unless someone performs magic." They laughed again, and one pointed at Marcus. "Hey, Marcus, you got any magic in that mop of yours?" The others chuckled. Marcus looked up slowly, then smiled politely. "No magic," he said softly. "Just patience." They laughed louder. "Patience won't fix machines, buddy," one shouted. Marcus turned away, hiding the faint smile forming on his lips. "We'll see," he thought. The rain grew heavier. Thunder rolled in the distance. As the day ended, the engineers started leaving one by one. Their faces showed defeat. The machine remained quiet, like it was mocking them all. Before the last engineer left, he looked at Marcus and said jokingly, "Hey, if you figure it out, let us know. Maybe we'll all get promoted." Marcus just nodded. "Sure," he said quietly. When the doors closed and silence filled the factory, Marcus stopped mopping. The only sounds were the rain and the low hum of the lights. He walked slowly toward the machine. He crouched beside it, tracing the lines of its metal panels with his fingers. It felt cold, lifeless, but familiar. Machines always told him their stories, if he listened carefully. He whispered, "They don't understand you, do they?" He grabbed the wrench he had hidden behind his mop cart and began checking the connections one by one. The valve he had fixed earlier was holding steady. Then he noticed something else, a small sensor wire slightly loose inside a panel. He tightened it carefully. Then he looked at the power switch. His hand hovered over it. "One try," he said quietly. He pressed the button. For a second, nothing happened. Then, a low rumble. Lights blinked on the control board. The machine shivered slightly, like it was waking from a long sleep. Marcus's eyes widened. He stepped back. The hum grew stronger. The machine's arms began to move slowly, then smoothly, perfectly. It was alive again. He covered his mouth, half in disbelief, half in joy. He whispered, "You're back." The sound filled the empty room, a deep, steady hum of success. Marcus stood there for a while, just watching. It wasn't just a machine to him, it was proof. Proof that he still had skill, still had worth, still had something inside him that no one could take away. He wanted to shout in excitement, but he didn't. He knew what to do next. He slowly turned the power off, wiped the fingerprints from the surface, and stepped back. He whispered, "Tomorrow's going to be interesting." When the night guard came by, he saw Marcus still there. "You're late again, my friend," the guard said. "You work harder than anyone here." Marcus smiled gently. "Just cleaning up," he replied. The guard chuckled. "You should be the boss." Marcus laughed softly. "No, I think I like being quiet." He pushed the mop bucket toward the door, glancing one last time at the machine now resting peacefully, ready for the morning. The hum had stopped, but something inside Marcus had just started moving again, a fire, small but strong. As he walked out, the sound of rain faded behind him. The empty room glowed faintly under the lights. On the control panel, one green light stayed on, a silent witness to what had just happened. The next morning began quietly. The storm had passed, leaving the city streets shining under the pale sun. The building looked calm from the outside, but inside, a storm was waiting to rise again. The engineers arrived early, their faces tired and uncertain. They were ready for another long, hopeless day. The machine stood in the same place, silent as always, or so they thought. The first engineer to arrive walked toward it, yawning, holding a cup of coffee. He placed his files on the desk, looked at the control panel, and froze. Something was different. He blinked twice, not sure if his sleepy eyes were playing tricks. The small power light on the machine, usually dead and dark, was glowing faintly green. He leaned closer. "What the?" he whispered. The air around the machine was warm, not cold like before. It smelled faintly of oil and heat. He called out, "Hey! Come here, guys!" The others rushed in, rubbing their eyes, still half asleep. "What's wrong?" one asked. He pointed at the panel. "Look! It's on!" They all leaned in. Their mouths fell open. The light was indeed on. The system screen, once frozen and blank, now showed a soft, steady signal. One of the engineers quickly opened the main dashboard. The data was normal, perfectly normal. "How?" he whispered. "We didn't touch it since last night." Everyone started talking at once. "Maybe it auto-restarted?" "No way, that system was dead." "Did someone sneak in here?" Just then, Mr. Grant walked in. His expression was the same as always, cold and impatient. "Why are you all standing around like idiots?" he snapped. The senior engineer turned to him quickly. "Sir, the machine, it's working." Mr. Grant stopped mid-step. "What did you say?" "It's working, sir. It started on its own this morning." For a few seconds, the CEO just stared at him. Then he walked forward, slow and suspicious. He stood before the machine and placed his hand on its metal surface. It was warm. Alive. The steady hum of its engine echoed softly in the quiet room. Mr. Grant's eyebrows furrowed. "Who turned it on?" The engineers looked at each other. Nobody answered. The CEO's tone grew sharper. "I asked a question. Who touched this machine?" The room stayed silent. Finally, the night guard, who had just arrived to hand over his shift, spoke up. "Sir, I saw someone here late last night." Everyone turned toward him. Mr. Grant narrowed his eyes. "Who?" The guard hesitated. "It was Marcus. The janitor." The room went silent again, heavier this time. You could almost hear everyone's heartbeat. Mr. Grant's lips curled into a half-smile that wasn't really a smile. "Marcus? The janitor?" The engineers began whispering among themselves. "No way. It can't be. He was just cleaning." Mr. Grant turned to his assistant. "Call him. Right now." Within minutes, Marcus entered, pushing his mop bucket like always. His uniform looked the same, clean but faded. His face calm, almost peaceful. The CEO crossed his arms. "Marcus," he said slowly, "the night guard says you were here late. Is that true?" Marcus nodded. "Yes, sir." "And did you touch this machine?" Marcus looked at the machine, then back at the CEO. "Yes, sir. I cleaned around it." Mr. Grant took a step closer. "Don't play games with me. Did you fix it?" Marcus hesitated. The whole room stared at him. He could feel their eyes, full of disbelief. He sighed softly. "It wasn't broken, sir," he said quietly. Everyone blinked. "What?" Mr. Grant asked sharply. "It wasn't broken," Marcus repeated. "The airline was blocked. I cleared it and adjusted a loose sensor. That's all." For a moment, no one moved. The silence was so deep you could hear the soft hum of the machine. Then someone laughed nervously. "You're joking, right? You're saying this janitor fixed what a team of engineers couldn't?" Mr. Grant's eyes stayed locked on Marcus. "Show me," he ordered. Marcus nodded. He walked toward the machine with slow, steady steps. The engineers stepped aside, whispering in disbelief. He crouched down, pointed at the valve, and said, "This pipe was bent here. Air couldn't pass through, so the system thought there was a fault. I fixed that, then checked the sensor wire, it was loose. I tightened it." He stood up and pressed the power button. The machine came to life instantly, humming smoothly, glowing with power. Everyone froze. Mr. Grant's eyes widened slightly. He didn't speak for a long time. Then he looked at Marcus again. How did you know?" Marcus smiled faintly. "Machines talk, sir. You just have to listen." The CEO didn't respond. He stared at the working machine, then at the man who had fixed it. The engineers around him stood speechless, their pride quietly melting. One of them finally said, "That's impossible. We checked everything." Marcus turned to him gently. "Sometimes the problem isn't in the system, it's in what we overlook." The CEO said nothing. He just stood there, hands in his pockets, his face unreadable. The sound of the machine filled the silence. Finally, he said, "Everyone, out." The engineers looked confused. "Sir." I said out. His tone was final. They all left, one by one, glancing at Marcus as they passed. Some looked angry, others embarrassed, but most looked simply shocked. When the room was empty, only Marcus and the CEO remained. Mr. Grant turned slowly and looked at him. "You've worked here how long?" 15 years, sir." 15 years, as a janitor?" "Yes, sir." The CEO frowned. "And before that?" Marcus hesitated, then said, "I was a mechanic. For another company. We built machines like this one." Mr. Grant's face softened for the first time. "So why are you here, cleaning floors?" Marcus gave a small, tired smile. "Because when that company shut down, I needed work. Any work. This was the only job I found." The CEO looked away for a moment, then back at him. There was something different in his eyes now, not anger, not pride, but respect. He walked over to his desk, picked up a keychain, and tossed it lightly toward Marcus. Marcus caught it, confused. Mr. Grant said quietly, "You remember my offer?" Marcus looked at the keys, realizing what they were. The car keys. The CEO continued, "You fixed it. You earned it." Marcus froze, staring at the keys. "Sir, I don't need your car." Mr. Grant smiled faintly. "Then take a new title instead." Marcus looked puzzled. "A title?" "Yes," the CEO said, his voice calm now. "You're not a janitor anymore." He paused, then added, "You're my new chief technician." Marcus blinked, not sure if he had heard right. "Sir, I..." But Mr. Grant raised a hand. "No. You earned it. Sometimes the people we overlook are the ones who can save us." Marcus looked down at the keys in his hand. His eyes grew wet. He didn't say anything. He just nodded slowly, holding back a smile. Outside, the sunlight broke through the clouds, shining through the glass windows and falling softly on the machine, the same one that everyone thought was dead, now alive again. And standing beside it was the man nobody saw coming. The news spread faster than fire. By the next morning, everyone in the building knew what had happened. Whispers moved from hallway to hallway, from cubicle to cubicle. The janitor fixed the machine. Some said it with disbelief, some with shame, and some with quiet admiration. People who had laughed at Marcus now avoided his eyes. Those who once ignored him suddenly found reasons to walk near him, as if being close to him might bring them luck. The whole atmosphere of the company had changed overnight. Mr. Grant arrived later than usual that morning. His usual sharp confidence looked softer, more thoughtful. As he entered the main floor, the noise died down. People pretended to work, but their eyes kept glancing at Marcus, the man sweeping the corner as always, like nothing had changed. The CEO walked toward him slowly. Everyone stopped pretending to work and began watching. "Marcus," Mr. Grant said, his voice calm but loud enough for everyone to hear. Marcus looked up, surprised. "Yes, sir?" Mr. Grant studied him for a moment, then said, "I want you to follow me." Marcus wiped his hands on his uniform and quietly followed. The crowd of employees exchanged quick glances, their curiosity burning. Inside the CEO's office, the air was still. Mr. Grant closed the door behind them and motioned for Marcus to sit. Marcus hesitated, then sat on the edge of the chair, nervous but calm. The CEO sat across from him. For a moment, neither spoke. Then Mr. Grant sighed. "I owe you an apology." Marcus blinked. "Sir?" "I laughed at you," the CEO said quietly. "We all did. And yet, when everyone else failed, you were the one who solved the problem." Marcus looked down at his hands. "It's okay, sir. You didn't know." "That's the point," Mr. Grant said, leaning forward. "I didn't know. I didn't care to know. You've been here 15 years, and I never asked what you could do. That's my failure, not yours." Marcus smiled faintly. "I was just doing my job." Mr. Grant nodded slowly. "And you did it better than anyone." He paused, then said, "You deserve to be seen, Marcus." The silence that followed carried more weight than words. Mr. Grant opened a folder on his desk and slid a paper across to Marcus. "This is your new contract. Starting today, you're no longer the janitor. You'll be the chief technician for this facility. You'll have a team under you, and you'll earn what you should have earned long ago." Marcus stared at the paper, eyes wide. His hands trembled slightly. "Sir, this is too much." The CEO shook his head. "It's not enough. But it's a start." For a long moment, Marcus couldn't speak. His throat felt tight. He finally said, softly, "Thank you, sir." Mr. Grant smiled, a real smile this time. "No, Marcus. Thank you. You reminded me that talent doesn't wear a suit. It can wear a janitor's uniform too." Marcus chuckled quietly, wiping his eyes with the back of his hand. "Machines don't care who fixes them, sir. They just need someone who listens." Mr. Grant nodded thoughtfully. "Maybe people are the same." As Marcus stood to leave, the CEO added, "One more thing. The car keys I gave you yesterday, they're still yours. Keep them." Marcus froze. "Sir, I can't." "You can," Mr. Grant said firmly. "You earned them fair and square. You fixed something none of us could. You reminded me of humility. That's worth more than a car." Marcus looked at the keys in his hand, his eyes shining with emotion. "Thank you, sir," he whispered again. When Marcus stepped out of the office, every head turned toward him. The room was silent. For the first time, people weren't laughing. They were watching him with respect. One of the engineers, the same man who had mocked him days ago, stepped forward awkwardly. "Marcus," he said quietly, I'm sorry for how we treated you." Marcus gave him a small smile. "It's all right. We all learn in different ways." Another engineer nodded. "You saved all of us. We'd have lost our jobs if the machine stayed down." Marcus shook his head. "No. We saved it together. I just saw what others missed." That answer only made them respect him more. It wasn't just his skill, it was his humility. The rest of the day passed differently. People who used to walk past him now stopped to greet him. The same janitor who once went unnoticed now had people asking for his opinion. He didn't act proud, he just kept doing his work quietly, like always. But when he passed the machine, he couldn't help but smile at it. The hum of its engine sounded like a friend whispering back. Later that evening, when most of the staff had gone home, Marcus stood alone near the big glass windows. The sky was turning orange with sunset. He looked down at the parking lot where Mr. Grant's black Mercedes gleamed under the golden light. He still couldn't believe it was his. Behind him, Mr. Grant approached quietly. "Not used to it yet?" he asked with a grin. Marcus laughed softly. "Not yet, sir. It feels strange." "Good strange, I hope?" Marcus nodded. "Yes. Very good." The CEO stood beside him, looking out at the horizon. "You know, Marcus," he said thoughtfully, "yesterday I thought leadership was about power. Today, I learned it's about respect." Marcus glanced at him. "And respect can come from anywhere, sir, even from someone with a mop." Mr. Grant smiled. "You're right." He offered his hand. "From now on, we build this company together." Marcus shook his hand firmly. "That sounds fair, sir." They both stood quietly for a while, watching the sunset reflect off the city buildings. For Marcus, it wasn't just another day ending, it was the beginning of something he thought he had lost forever: pride, dignity, and a place where he belonged. When he finally walked out to the parking lot, he stopped for a moment beside the car. His reflection looked back at him from the shiny black surface, the same man, but no longer invisible. He smiled and whispered, 15 years later, not too late after all." The wind brushed softly against his face, carrying with it the quiet hum of the factory behind him, the sound of machines working, of lessons learned, and of a man who proved that greatness can come from anywhere. The following week changed everything at the company. The usual tension that filled the halls was gone. There was a strange new calm, the kind that comes after a storm, when people start to rebuild. Marcus now had a small office beside the machine room. It wasn't fancy, just a desk, a chair, and a nameplate that read Chief Technician. But to Marcus, it felt like a dream. Every morning, when he touched that nameplate, he remembered the years he had walked past those same doors with a mop in his hand. Now, engineers came to him for advice. "Marcus, can you take a look at this code? Marcus, do you think this pressure level is safe?" Each time, he answered patiently, with that same gentle smile. He never spoke with pride or showed off. Instead, he explained things slowly, making sure everyone understood. He was not just fixing machines anymore, he was fixing people's attitudes. And Mr. Grant noticed. The CEO had changed too. His once cold, commanding voice had softened. He started walking around the factory floor, greeting people by name, something he had never done before. Employees whispered to each other, surprised. "He's different now," they said. Marcus changed him. One afternoon, Mr. Grant called Marcus into his office again. "Come in," he said, smiling as Marcus entered. "Sit down. I have something to show you." On the CEO's desk lay a printed report, a summary of the company's latest productivity results. The numbers had gone up, higher than they had been in months. "Look at this," Mr. Grant said proudly. "Since you fixed that machine, we've been running at 98% efficiency." The board is impressed. Marcus smiled quietly. "That's good news, sir." Mr. Grant leaned back in his chair. "You know what they asked me?" "What, sir?" "They asked me who repaired the system. When I told them it was our janitor, they laughed." Marcus looked down, embarrassed. Mr. Grant continued, "But then I showed them the video." "Video?" Marcus asked. Mr. Grant nodded. "Security footage. It showed you fixing that machine with nothing but a wrench and calm confidence." After that, nobody was laughing. Marcus chuckled softly. "I didn't know the cameras were still on." Mr. Grant smiled. They were. And that footage reminded everyone here that real skill doesn't need a title. For a moment, they both sat in silence. Then the CEO said, "You know, Marcus, I keep thinking about that night. I was ready to give up. I was ready to shut down the factory. If you hadn't stepped in, hundreds of people might have lost their jobs." Marcus shook his head. "You would have found another way, sir." Mr. Grant looked at him seriously. "No, Marcus. You were the way." The words hung in the air. That evening, Mr. Grant did something no one expected. He called for an all-staff meeting in the main hall. The workers gathered, murmuring among themselves. The CEO rarely spoke directly to everyone. When he stepped onto the stage, the room went quiet. He looked around the hall, then began, "I called this meeting for one reason. I made a mistake, a big one. For years, I've judged people by their titles, their degrees, their clothes. I thought leadership meant knowing more than others. But last week, a man I barely noticed showed me how wrong I was." Everyone looked around, confused. Mr. Grant continued, "When our main system failed, not one of our top engineers could fix it. We were ready to shut everything down. But then, someone stepped in. Not an engineer. Not a manager. A janitor." A few gasps moved through the crowd. All eyes turned to Marcus, who stood quietly at the back, looking down shyly. Mr. Grant gestured toward him. "That man is Marcus. He fixed what no one else could. And he reminded all of us, that true skill has no uniform. Respect has no title." The room stayed silent. You could feel the emotion building. Mr. Grant continued, "From now on, I want this company to change. I want every worker, every cleaner, every technician to be treated with the same respect as a manager. Because without each one of you, this place is nothing." He looked toward Marcus. "Marcus, will you come up here?" Marcus hesitated, but the crowd began to clap softly, encouraging him. He walked up to the stage slowly, his heart pounding. When he reached the CEO, Mr. Grant turned to him and said, "You taught us more in one night than I could in 10 years. Marcus smiled nervously. "Sir, I just did what anyone would do." Mr. Grant shook his head. "No, Marcus. You did what most wouldn't. You cared." The applause grew louder. Marcus looked out at the faces before him, the same people who once ignored him now cheering for him. His eyes grew wet. "I never wanted attention," he said softly into the microphone. "I just wanted to help. But I learned something too. Sometimes, when you do your best quietly, someone still notices." The room erupted in applause again. Even the engineers who once doubted him were clapping, some wiping tears from their eyes. Mr. Grant put a hand on Marcus's shoulder. "From this day forward, no one in this company will be unseen." The words hit everyone deeply. For the first time, there was unity, real unity, in that hall. After the meeting, people came to shake Marcus's hand, pat his back, thank him. One of the young engineers said, "You gave us hope again." Marcus smiled humbly. "Hope is something you build, one act at a time." That night, as the factory lights dimmed and the halls emptied, Marcus stayed back a little longer. He walked past the old cleaning closet where he used to keep his mop and bucket. The smell of detergent, the sound of dripping water, they all felt distant now, like memories from another lifetime. He placed his hand on the mop handle gently, almost as if saying goodbye to an old friend. Then he whispered, "Thank you for carrying me this far." As he turned off the lights and stepped outside, the cold night air hit his face. He looked up at the stars, bright, countless, endless, and smiled. Because for the first time in 15 long years, Marcus didn't feel small anymore. He felt seen. The story didn't stay inside the company for long. 2 days after the staff meeting, someone from the factory had uploaded the short security video online, the moment Marcus fixed the machine, calm and focused, while others stood watching. Within hours, the clip spread across social media. The caption read, "The janitor who fixed what the engineers couldn't." People all over the internet began sharing it, writing comments like, "This is what real talent looks like. Respect doesn't come from titles. We need more bosses like this CEO who admitted his mistake." By the next morning, Marcus's story had reached millions. News channels started calling the company. Reporters waited outside the gates. Inside, the office buzzed with excitement and nervousness. Some employees couldn't believe that their once-ignored janitor had become a national story. Others felt proud to be part of something bigger than themselves. Mr. Grant, however, looked worried. He knew how fast fame could twist a story. He didn't want Marcus to be turned into a joke or an online headline. So he called Marcus to his office again. When Marcus entered, Mr. Grant was already pacing the floor. "They want to interview you," he said. "Every network in the city. They say your story's inspiring people everywhere." Marcus frowned. "Interview me? I don't think that's a good idea, sir. I'm not good with cameras." Mr. Grant smiled slightly. "That's what makes you perfect for it. You're real. People will see that." Marcus shook his head. "Sir, I never wanted attention. I just wanted to fix the machine." "I know," Mr. Grant said softly. "But maybe your story can fix something bigger now, how people see each other." Marcus didn't answer right away. He looked down, thinking. Then he said quietly, "If it helps someone believe in themselves again, maybe it's worth it." The next day, the main conference hall was filled with cameras and reporters. Marcus sat beside Mr. Grant at a small table under the bright studio lights. His hands trembled slightly, but his face stayed calm. A young reporter leaned forward with a smile. "Marcus, can you tell us what went through your mind that night when you decided to fix the machine?" Marcus looked thoughtful. "Honestly, ma'am, I wasn't thinking about being a hero. I was thinking about how many people depended on that machine. If it stopped, their jobs were at risk. I just wanted to help." The reporter nodded, impressed. "You worked here 15 years as a janitor. Didn't it bother you that no one recognized your skills?" Marcus smiled gently. "No, ma'am. Recognition isn't why I worked. I did my job because it was mine to do. Sometimes, life takes you places you didn't plan, but that doesn't mean you stop giving your best." The room went quiet for a second, even the reporters lowered their cameras. Then the reporter turned to Mr. Grant. "And you, sir? What was your first thought when you realized your janitor had fixed the problem?" Mr. Grant sighed. "Shame," he admitted. "I laughed at him. I judged him. But that night, Marcus showed me that wisdom doesn't always wear a suit. Sometimes, it wears a uniform." The cameras clicked rapidly. When the interview ended, Marcus stood up, relieved. He didn't realize his calm words would soon be replayed on every major news channel in the country. People loved his humility, his kindness, and the way he spoke about respect. By evening, thousands of people online were tagging the company, thanking Marcus for his honesty. Some said his story gave them hope to keep working hard. Others said it reminded them to treat everyone kindly. In the following days, letters began arriving at the company addressed to Marcus, handwritten notes from students, factory workers, and even retired mechanics. Some said, "You reminded me of my father." Others wrote, "You made me believe that my job matters again." One morning, Marcus opened an envelope that made his hands tremble. It was from a young boy named Ethan, who wrote, "Dear Mr. Marcus, my mom cleans offices. People don't talk to her much. But I told her about you, and now she smiles again. She says one day, people will see her too. Thank you for fixing more than machines. Marcus read that letter 3 times before tears finally filled his eyes. He kept it in his pocket for days, folded neatly, like a small piece of strength. Meanwhile, Mr. Grant was invited to speak at a leadership conference. But instead of talking about business or profits, he told Marcus's story. He said, "A true leader doesn't stand above others. He stands beside them. Marcus taught me that." The audience gave him a standing ovation. Back at the factory, Marcus's life began to change, but he didn't. He still arrived early, still wore his old uniform some days, still greeted the cleaning staff by name. "Just because I have a new title," he'd say with a grin, "doesn't mean I forget where I came from." One evening, he found the same young engineer who once mocked him struggling with a jammed valve. The boy looked frustrated. Marcus walked over and said quietly, "Want some help?" The engineer nodded, embarrassed. Marcus smiled and showed him how to release the air pressure slowly, then adjust the seal gently instead of forcing it. When the valve loosened easily, the boy stared in surprise. "How do you make it look so easy?" he asked. Marcus chuckled. "Because I stopped fighting the machine. I started listening to it." The young man nodded slowly, realizing Marcus wasn't just teaching him about machines, he was teaching him about life. That night, as the factory lights dimmed, Marcus stood by the window again, looking out over the city. The glow of traffic lights shimmered below, the hum of engines filled the air, and he smiled. He had never asked for fame, but now he understood something powerful. Sometimes, the quietest people start the loudest changes. The world now knew his name, but what mattered to him most was simple: respect had finally found its way home. Months passed, but Marcus's story never faded. People across the country still talked about the janitor who fixed the unfixable. Magazines wrote about him, schools invited him to speak, and even college students quoted his lines in their essays about humility and hard work. But Marcus remained the same, calm, humble, grounded. He still walked through the same halls every morning, greeting everyone with that same warm smile. The company had changed too, not just in profits, but in heart. There were no more invisible people. The cleaning crew was treated with respect, the engineers worked as a team, and the CEO walked among them like one of their own. It wasn't just a company anymore, it was a family. One rainy afternoon, Marcus stood near the window of the main floor, watching the drops slide down the glass. He smiled softly, remembering the years when he had watched from the same spot, unseen. Now, people greeted him every time they passed by. Behind him, a familiar voice spoke. "Still love the rain, huh?" He turned to see Mr. Grant standing there, holding 2 cups of coffee. He handed one to Marcus. Marcus chuckled. "Old habits, sir. I used to watch the rain and think about all the things I couldn't change." Mr. Grant smiled. "And now?" Marcus looked out the window again. "Now I think about how much can change, if someone just believes." The 2 men stood quietly for a moment, sipping their coffee. The hum of the machines filled the room, that same steady sound that had started everything. Mr. Grant broke the silence. "You know, Marcus, I've been thinking. We're opening a new branch in Chicago next year. I want you to lead it." Marcus turned quickly. "Sir, me? Let it?" Mr. Grant nodded. "Yes. You've earned it. You understand machines better than anyone, but more importantly, you understand people." Marcus's eyes softened. "I don't know if I'm the right man for that." The CEO smiled. "That's exactly why you are. The best leaders are the ones who never think they're above others." Marcus took a deep breath, feeling a quiet emotion rise in his chest. He looked around the factory floor, the place that had once been just a job, now a story, a lesson, a home. "I'll do it," he said finally. "But only if I can take my old team with me." Mr. Grant grinned. "That's the Marcus I know. As they shook hands, the sound of thunder rolled outside. The rain grew heavier, but neither of them moved. They just stood there, two men who had once been worlds apart, now equals, connected by respect. That evening, when everyone left, Marcus stayed behind for one last walk through the factory. He passed the old machine, still humming perfectly, still shining under the dim light. He ran his hand along its metal surface gently, as if thanking it. He whispered, "You started all this, old friend." As he turned to leave, he noticed someone standing by the door, the young engineer he'd helped weeks ago. "Leaving already?" the boy asked. Marcus smiled. "Just saying goodbye. Time for a new chapter." The engineer hesitated, then said, "I wanted to thank you, Marcus. You changed the way I see things. I used to think only smart people made a difference. Now I know, good people do." Marcus's smile widened. "Then promise me something," he said. "No matter where you go, never look down on anyone. The person you ignore today might be the one who saves you tomorrow." The young man nodded, his eyes glistening. Marcus gave him a small pat on the shoulder, then walked out into the rain. Outside, the sky was gray, but the air felt clean, alive. He stood for a moment, letting the drops hit his face, washing away the years of being unseen. Each drop felt like freedom. When he reached the parking lot, he stopped beside the black car, the one the CEO had once promised as a joke but later gave in respect. He smiled, remembering that night. "Fix this, and my car's yours." He had fixed more than a machine. He had fixed people's hearts. As he got into the car, he noticed a small note on the passenger seat. It was from Mr. Grant. "For the man who reminded me what leadership really means, thank you, Marcus. Keep driving forward. The road is yours now." Marcus folded the note carefully and placed it in his jacket pocket beside the old letter from Ethan, the boy whose mother cleaned offices. Both reminders of why he did what he did. He started the engine, the low hum echoing like the heartbeat of his story. As he drove away, the factory lights faded behind him, glowing softly in the mist. In that moment, he realized something. Life doesn't always reward the loudest voices. Sometimes, it rewards the quiet ones, the ones who keep working, keep believing, and never give up, even when no one's watching. The rain began to ease as he reached the highway. A soft beam of sunlight broke through the clouds, shining across the wet road like a path made just for him. Marcus smiled. He didn't just fix a broken system, he fixed a broken world, one act of humility at a time. And somewhere, deep in the quiet hum of the car, it almost felt like the machine was whispering back to him. "You did it, Marcus." He looked ahead, eyes full of peace and pride, and said softly, "No, we did it." Then he drove on, disappearing into the golden light of a new beginning. The janitor who became the heart of a company. And the man who proved that greatness can rise from the most ordinary places.